This is Zestology, new rules for living with energy, vitality and motivation. I'm Tony Wrighton, walking through a different park to the one that I normally do. And the rose garden is out, it's very nice as well. Lots going on actually. Soon I'll be at the end of the park though, and it'll be a road, and it won't sound quite so nice, I don't think. Anyway, today's interview is with someone very kind of well-known and high profile in the paleo and primal community. Elle Russ is on Zestology, talking about something that I know is important, but I don't really know why. The thyroid. What is it? And why is it so important? I know it's kind of somewhere around the throat area, but it turns out the thyroid regulates almost all of your hormones and everything going on in your body. If your thyroid isn't in the right place, there might be loads of problems, whether you're a man or a woman. And so Elle Russ comes on to tell me all about it on today's podcast. And we talk primal diets and intermittent fasting and the ketosis diet and so many other things as well. But I thought what she said about the thyroid, how we can test for it, and by the way, there's a horror test that you do not want to take, which a lot of doctors prescribe because it just doesn't give you the right information, and she goes into that as well. So what is the thyroid? Why is it important? How could you test to see if your thyroid isn't working optimally? And how could you kind of get an extra 5, 10, 15 or 50% out of your performance and day-to-day life? Here she is then, Elle Russ on Zestology, explaining what can happen if your thyroid levels aren't optimum and how you can optimise them.
I would urge anyone to try a natural protocol to try to get your thyroid to kick itself back into gear. You know, there are things with diet and lifestyle and supplementation and other things that absolutely affect thyroid negatively. So I've seen people really turn around things in a 180 degrees in 6 to 8 weeks. It's totally possible. But that is up to the person. And then you try that first. And if that doesn't work, you can just keep going down the road of discovery. There are a million things that contribute to thyroid health. Or at that point, one can go on thyroid hormone replacement, which is giving your body what it needs and lacks. And so at that point, then you go up the ladder of becoming optimized on thyroid hormones. And then you kind of hang out there. And then you're not hypo anymore. And there's your life. And the only bitch about it is you got to go take medication with you. And I don't want people to think of it as medication because often medication from a pharmaceutical company manipulates our bodies in ways it's not supposed to work. And that's why there's all those horrible side effects you hear on
when I heard the word medication, I was like, oh, I like to do things naturally if I can.
But this is natural because what it is it's really like you're depleted of hormones and you need them and you're giving your body them, and there's no bad side effects from that because it's just replacing what you're lacking. So I a lot of people think about medication and it's not, it's hormone replacement and it's different. But yes, you can get it kicked back into gear. Lifestyle and diet absolutely are a factor. Things like one thing everyone can do right now if they feel like they've got a thyroid issue or want to optimize is go get a bottle of selenium for 200 micrograms of selenium and take one a day for the next couple months and then keep a bottle around and fractally dose it. That is very important to thyroid. Iron storage for women, ferritin, needs to be at a proper level or their own thyroid hormones won't work and get to where they need to go, or the ones you're taking. See, it doesn't really matter if you're taking thyroid hormones or you have ones that are being pumped out naturally by your thyroid because you don't have a problem. Either way, why do you care? Because again, T3 is it's the only fat-burning hormone we have in our body. So if you care about fat burning and health and longevity and all of that, you want your thyroid to be optimized. So you don't even have to have a problem. So how do you screw up and send the wrong messages to the thyroid? Well, by over-exercising and under-eating, or over-exercising and being carbohydrate dependent, or type 2 diabetes, getting pre-diabetic. That goes hand in hand with thyroid as well. So the reason my book's called The Paleo Thyroid Solution, it's not just, oh, you got fat when you were hypo, and now here's how to lose the weight. That is part of it. But the biggest part about it is most hypothyroid people do become insulin resistant. This is the only way out of it. And the other thing too is this. This is not a gimmick. It's that paleo primal lifestyles and ancestral living is the ultimate in blood glucose management and adrenal management. And those two things go hand in hand with thyroid and go hand in hand with testosterone. So again, even if you don't have a thyroid problem, but you're a guy and you want to optimize your testosterone and your workouts, you should consider going down an ancestral paleo primal health path to reserve muscle and optimize testosterone. People who are sugar burners who have to eat every 2-3 hours and are on that up and down cycle, okay, those drops and those lows, the adrenals will respond and shoot out cortisol. That's antagonistic to testosterone. So dudes, if you're out there, I mean, this is predominantly a women's issue. More women than men get thyroid issues, but everybody should be concerned about the health and the well-being of their thyroid. You don't want something to go wrong with this. You want to send it the right messages. You want to feed it the right nutrients, and you want to, for example, a primal perspective of the body, your body's always trying to save you. Okay. So for example, when you get type 2 diabetes because you ate too much crap, which it's always given to oneself unbeknownst to them, whether intentionally or not, type 2 diabetes is a condition you get, not you're born with. And in those scenarios, your body is pushing all that glucose into the insulin, into the fat cells, making you fat. Usually diabetics get fat. You're lucky if you're one of those people. You don't want to be skinny fat or skinny diabetic because then all that sugar is just in your bloodstream, right? So it's kind of like your body's working for you at all times. The same goes with the thyroid. It's always trying to protect you. It's got this very high metabolic T3 that it's pushing out. So let's say you're over-exercising and under-eating and don't know it just because you're eating the wrong macros, you're on some low-carb, low-fat paradigm. Your body's not satiated. The message being sent is, this chick is starving. So we're dialing this thyroid back right now because we're not going to give her any more of this fat-burning T3 until she's out of danger. So people screw up their thyroids by dieting, okay? By starving themselves, low caloric. Eventually, that's what happens because the message is, hey man, she's in danger, right? Same thing goes with she's in danger, can't get food, we're going to screw up her hormones and we're not going to enable her to get pregnant. And if she does, we're going to give her a miscarriage because she's in no position to bring a baby into this world at this time. See what I mean? Now that sounds crazy for me to personify the human body, but that's really how it is. It's always trying to help you. It's trying to save you. So what messages are you sending? Those messages come in form of the food, supplements, nutrients, and also lifestyle.
So this podcast is about energy and living with zestiness.
Everything to do with thyroid, by the way.
Is it?
Everything.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, because mental energy and energy. So people become very depressed, tired, sleeping all the time, 3 hours to get out of bed.
There is a distinction, isn't there, between mental and physical as well?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest benefits to having proper thyroid hormone metabolism and levels is the brain. It is your thoughts. So for example, when you're hypothyroid, you're klutzy and clumsy, even though you're normally athletic and coordinated. Hand-eye coordination is bad, messy handwriting, you get dyslexia of the mouth, almost can't get out the words, it really affects your brain negatively. So that's really one of the positives as well for people. Even if you don't need to lose weight and you feel pretty healthy, you still want that thyroid optimized in every way possible for brain function.
I just wanted to quickly mention again the tests. It's T3, which is the most important one.
Free T3, right? So I'll go through them again.
Yeah.
6 major tests to just do a initial, what's going on with my thyroid. That's TSH, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, and then 2 Hashimoto's antibodies, TPO-AB and TG-AB. Those stand for TPO is thyroid peroxidase, TG is thyroid globulin. Now, if a doctor doesn't test the reverse T3 and somehow you can't beg them to get that done, at the very least get the others.
What was and doctors, if they start bringing in a test from 40 years ago, what was that one?
The TSH, which is still applicable as in this spiral of tests, but it's not applicable on its own. So if anyone is ever using TSH or TSH and T4 by itself to assess your thyroid, that doctor doesn't know what the F they're talking about, literally doesn't understand. So you must run or go find a doctor who does, or you'll never be treated properly. You can try to educate that doctor. good luck, because a lot of endocrinologists have the highest egos. And Dr. Forsman, who's a great functional doctor, who's the doctor on my book, explains this. Because I was like, how do doctors not know this? How can they not know? What they have the degrees. What? And he said, here's the thing. It's really ego. Imagine you go to Oxford, you go to Harvard, you've spent 10 years of your life, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're thinking to yourself, how could I not have learned everything I needed to know?
Yeah.
It's purely down to effing ego. And that's scary, guys. It's scary. I've had doctors discount me over the years, tell me I didn't know what I was talking about. I had a doctor laugh at me when I asked to get my B12 tested. Turns out I had a severe deficiency. You should just see what comes out of people's mouths. Doctors often tell patients, you just need to work out more and eat less. Tell them they have a closet eating disorder. Again, because they're giving the patient thyroid hormones. The thyroid patients are still complaining, and the doctor's going, well, can't be me, right? Can't be me. But the doctors that really know what they're doing, those are the doctors that when those patients came to them, they go, having a lot of people still suffering, even though I'm doing what I was taught.
Yeah.
Maybe I should look into this. And you want a doctor who's a geek out like that. I want a doctor that's still like got that same fervor that they did in medical school, right? Where they're like, ooh, let's solve this problem.
Yeah.
That's what you want in a doctor.
And that's, I guess you have to take a certain amount of responsibility for your health yourself as well, just simply because there are so many doctors out there. You have to kind of keep on top of your practitioners, don't you? Some are brilliant and some aren't so brilliant, and rely on their old training.
Yeah, and a lot of people contact me to ask me, friends and other people who are like, how do I talk to my doctor? Like, how do I tell them? Like, I don't think they know this. So how do I it's a tricky dance, it's a tricky thing. Someone has their MD and they think they know what's up, but they really don't. So how do you go about that? That's a tricky, right? Someone's considering themselves as an expert. Yeah. And here's why though. The best-selling thyroid books in the world have only and always been written by patients, not doctors. And there's a reason for that, right? Because we know what it's like. We've had to biohack this stuff. No doctor that's ever not been through it can understand how it feels. So I just want to put that out there. I will mention two other authors that are worthwhile. There are a million thyroid books out there, including mine. There are only two others that I ever recommend to anyone. One is called Stop the Thyroid Madness, and it also is the best website for thyroid health that anybody can access. The other is a book written by a patient out of the UK who saved my life. And his book is all about T3 only dosing or reverse T3 hypothyroidism, which is a very specific sort of last choice situation of people that get screwed and have to go in that situation, which is what I did. And his book is called Recovering with T3, and his name is Paul Robinson. So those two authors are the ones to also, put in your repertoire other than mine.
You mentioned, I know you work quite closely with Mark Sisson, don't you? And you mentioned a kind of a primal and ancestral diet, widening it out a little bit. That is something that obviously comes up a lot on my podcast in terms of eating a relatively low carb and a relatively high fat diet. What's your thinking on the ideal ratios? Are you into ketosis? What diet are you on?
Well, I was certified by Mark Sisson in ancestral health. I'm the fifth person in the world and so proud to be a primal health coach. And also I do host his podcast, the Primal Blueprint podcast. Yeah. And I've tried all different levels of paleo primal. Here's the thing. If you're not in good metabolic health, meaning you tried some kind of low carb diet and nothing worked for you for 6 to 8 weeks, then you might have to investigate further. It could be a thyroid problem. Nobody should jump into ketosis ever. Okay. So keto is a big hot word right now. And so people are like, oh my God, this is the way to torch fat. I'm going to jump right into that. You can't jump into ketosis coming from a place of being a hypoglycemic sugar burner and carbohydrate dependent. It's going to be painful and it's not going to work right. So you really have to earn the right to go into ketosis, which is what Mark Sisson and Brad Kearns talk about in their best-selling book, The Keto Reset. It's like you've got to go through this process of getting fat adapted, unaddicted to glucose, uncarbohydrate dependent, and then once you're there, and it's about how you feel. So for example, no one should ever go in ketosis if you can't wake up and not have any food before 1 o'clock without having a mental breakdown or mental lapse or exhaustion. If you're freaking out, then you're not ready. You're not fat adapted, because if you're fat adapted, you could go all day from waking up without eating and not even have a problem. That sounds crazy to people.
It does take a while to get into it anyway, even if you are kind of relatively healthy. There's quite an adjustment, isn't there?
It's an adjustment, so you got to go in the right direction. Usually people, low carb is not to blame for thyroid problems, no matter what people say about that. There's no evidence, and everyone is absolutely misguided on that. I talk about that on a lot of podcasts. A lot of people who go to keto and they go, oh, keto screwed up my thyroid. You're like, really? Or were you already fat and overweight and struggling to begin with, and then you went to keto? You can't blame keto for something you were already in when you got there. So I've never seen a healthy, normal person with great thyroid function go into keto or low carb and have it screw up their thyroid. That doesn't work. The only way that would work is when you go really low carb or keto, you end up having incredible appetite suppression, which is awesome, especially if you've been, a pig for a while and just had sugar addiction, you're like a food addict. It's great, but it also can be a little bit like addictive in the sense that when that appetite is so suppressed and you're kind of getting off on that in a lot of ways because it feels really good, you can end up eating very few calories, which would then send the wrong message, right? Yeah. So when you're low carb and keto, when you get that appetite suppression, you still need to make sure you're getting enough calories. That's when things can start to go wrong. It's okay to have 2 days a week or a day a week where maybe you only eat 500 calories or you eat very little amount. That's fine, but you keep doing that and that's going to do exactly the opposite of what you want.
Yeah, it's funny. Sorry, carry on.
I was going to say, I eat low carb. I'm 5'2", so I'm a short female. I really don't eat more than 100 grams of carbs a day. I try to stay between like 50 and 80. Sometimes I go super low. I go in and out of ketosis. I do not test my blood. At some point, you become efficient at burning ketones and you kind of understand this. And it's really about flexibility. I believe tracking macros can be important at first if you know nothing about food. So for example, one bunch of asparagus cooked is 20 grams of carbohydrates. Hey, in a day of 50, really? Okay, right? Maybe you don't eat the whole bunch. It is. Now, granted, it's got fiber. It's good for you. It's a vegetable, but there's still carbs are carbs are carbs. Your body doesn't know the difference between one Coca-Cola and 3 pieces of sliced mango. It doesn't know the difference. One is better, clearly, but it's processed by the body in the same way. It doesn't matter. People say, oh, I don't have a sweet tooth. Really? Do you eat bread? Do you eat chips? It's the same thing. It turns any carb turns into glucose. Now, granted, vegetables and things like that with the fiber content take longer. So I feel it's important for people to start initially counting carbs. And when we look at the primal blueprint or an ancestral way of living, the denotation is usually unless you are an NBA basketball player or a bricklayer, you don't eat more than 150 grams of carbs a day. Okay. So most people eat 200, 300 grams of carbs a day. Okay. One green juice that I think is healthy for me, there goes 30 grams of carbs right there. Right. So, wow, in a day of 80, really? You're going to drink that juice? I'm not. So it's really about looking at where your carbs are first, and then you can go from there. But essentially an ancestral paradigm, paleo primal, is high fat, moderate protein, low carb. It's not a high protein diet. People think, oh yeah, meat, you just go eat a bunch of meat. Actually, no, you overeat meat and it'll turn into glucose. So, there's so much free information out there. Anyone can go to the primalblueprint.com or Mark's Daily Apple, look and listen to some of our beginning podcasts. This is all information, but a lot of people misunderstand it. They think that paleo primal is just looking at a food list. It's really not. It's about becoming fat adapted. It's about turning over from being dependent on fueling your body from glucose and turning it into what our genes as human beings expect of us, which is to primarily burn fat as its main fuel, not glucose.
Yeah, it's funny. You were talking about how there's a kind of a certain appetite suppressant, and your appetite is kind of dulled a little bit when you are in a kind of very low carb or fat adapted manner. I haven't found that really to be the case, actually. I mean, I'm kind of, in and out of ketosis. Sounds like it's pretty similar to you in terms of the diet, but I still get pretty ravenous. I love, I'm eating the right stuff, but still love eating.
Are you not? Well, that's great. And I mean, a lot of guys are powerhouse furnaces of metabolism. That's why when we're in bed with men, like it's like a heater in the bed, right? Because you guys just have a higher output. You might not be eating enough fat. There could be something there that's not satiating you in the brain that's contributing to the hunger. That's usually, if people are like, I'm still hungry, or it's usually like, you might actually need more fat than you think you do. Yeah. And that could be something you might want to add. So if you had a meal and then you feel like a couple hours later you're still even hungry after that, I'd do like a big half an avocado with salt or a spoonful of coconut butter or even just coconut oil. I would MCT, anything. I would put some fat in there and then wait 15 minutes and see what happens in your brain. And I have a feeling it would cut off that appetite. But again, if you can inhale food and enjoy that, great. It's just there are people out there that are like, Mark Sisson talks about this. He goes to the gym and the person's killing it on the bike every
Yeah.
day, and Mark will say, "Hey, what do you training for something?" And the guy will be like, "Nope, just love to eat." And so here's the thing.
Yeah.
You're not going to get away with that. No one's going to get away with that. And here's why. You could be the thinnest yoga teacher, ripped adventure racer on planet Earth, but in the background, you're tapping that pancreas. In the background, you're actually pre-diabetic and you don't even know it. You can get away with it looks-wise, but you're not going to get away with it on the back end because the pancreas does not like to be tapped like that. It's going to tap out eventually, like in a boxing ring, and just go, "I'm done. I'm done. There goes type 2 diabetes. I'm done. I'm tapped out. You messed with me enough. Stop effing with me." Okay. So, and the same thing goes for the adrenals. The reason hypothyroid patients often get adrenal fatigue and then get very fat around the middle is because excess production of cortisol. They don't have any, quote, energy from no T3 in their body, right? So their adrenals will go, "Oh my God, we got to get this chick out of bed." And it's outputting adrenaline and cortisol. And that does nothing but create havoc in the body. And then eventually the adrenals go, "I'm done. I've had it." And so the same thing happens with the pancreas. The essentially the goal is release as little amount of insulin throughout your lifetime and you'll live the longest, period. Doesn't matter what species we look at. Okay. Insulin's important as a storage, as a hormone, storage hormone, fat storage hormone, but you don't want to keep igniting it. So when you're in a fat adapted paradigm, your blood glucose is steady and low and you don't have these spikes and drops. And then you're not constantly tapping and knocking on the door. You are, though, when you're eating every 2-3 hours and you're a sugar burner and you're up and you're down. Every time you put something in your body, insulin is released unless it's protein and fat. And I just want to give a fact out here. No human being ever needs to consume a carbohydrate for the rest of their lives. However, you're going to die without protein and fat. Because see, back in the day when we wouldn't have gotten any food, 50,000 years ago, we're roaming, we run into one buffalo, okay, and then we don't see anything for weeks. Did we all pass out and not be able to handle ourselves? No. In fact, our bodies went into ketosis, alternate food source, and we lived off of the fat and the flesh of that animal. And that overeating of the flesh potentially at that time could have had a nice slow release glucose mechanism, right? Called gluconeogenesis, where if you overeat protein, it'll turn into glucose as needed. Our bodies will make glucose when it needs to. We really only should have like a tablespoon of sugar in our blood at any given time, and our bodies and our organs can only store, 200 to 300, grams of glucose. So if you're a sugar burner, then you're working out really hard, you're burning the sugar you ate last night, and then you get done with that workout. Now your stores are all depleted from the glucose. Now you got to refill them. That's why you're hungry and sore. And thus the hamster wheel continues.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's in fact, I was just working. My day job is I work in TV here in the UK, and we were working on an outside broadcast this weekend. And one of the crew thought he was being very friendly, went to the local Asda and bought this massive tray of donuts, 12 donuts for £2.50, which isn't very much. That makes me think, okay, maybe my appetite isn't as much as some people, because it was very easy to kind of turn the donuts down, and everyone else, of course, dived straight in. And one of my friends actually said, tastes like diabetes, as he was eating the donuts.
Yeah,
probably not that good for you. But I've got some specific questions that I wanted to ask you, kind of a bit more in depth on various topics that I know you sometimes go into on your podcast and with Mark and as part of the kind of primal blueprint. Intermittent fasting. Obviously, that's quite a hot topic. I know it comes up on your podcast, comes up on mine as well. Seems, generally speaking, that some kind of fast can be good for us. When you're intermittent fasting, do you take supplements during the fast?
Usually not, unless it's something I have to take on an empty stomach, like systemic enzymes. Other than that, I usually don't. Intermittent fasting is incredible, but again, I would suggest that if you're new to this and you are a sugar burner, you can't go 4 or 6 hours without eating and not have a hangry meltdown, then you go down the road of starting to clean out the bad oils, start to go on a lower carb paradigm, not ketosis, but again, under 150 grams. And if you're a short female like me, maybe you stay at 100 grams total a day at first. You can always lower and adjust from there. But jumping into intermittent fasting right away can be brutal. So the best way to start is if you feel like you're starting to get ready where you don't eat that breakfast anymore, because once you start to get fat adapted, you end up not being hungry in the morning. That's usually what people find out, is that breakfast eaters or people that woke up hungry will no longer be. And so then what do you do at that point? Or in general, if you want to try this, I would say like bone broth, a cup of bone broth with butter, some bulletproof coffee with a little bit of butter and collagen, maybe just half an avocado with salt before noon or 1, and that being the only thing that you consume is some kind of fat, or a little bit of fat and carbs. There's a little bit of carbs in avocado. I naturally intermittent fast, meaning I'm never hungry, usually before 12 or 1. And I do usually, and I subscribe to like a 4 or 6 hour eating window. I feel best when I do that. But again, I've built the metabolic machinery to get there. It's not suffering for me to go that long at all. I go work out, do a whole thing. I have no, you know what I mean? There's no craziness going on in my brain. I'm completely satisfied. And that's the benefit of being fat adapted.
Yeah.
You don't have food. You're on a 5-hour plane flight, and you don't need to eat because your body's fueling itself off the fat from your thighs at that moment.
Couple of other questions then. One of the things that I've found with a kind of a low carb diet is that I get very thirsty and it feels like I'm struggling to rehydrate. Where do you stand on rehydration tablets or sachets? Because I've tried some of these and I think when they're flavored with stevia, it actually, my body thinks it's sugar even if it's not, and it doesn't like it.
That's right. Yeah, stevia is something I just try to stay away from all kind of alternative anything. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Sometimes people
do you
with
stay away from xylitol
issues,
as well?
I do, unless I buy a pack of gum, it happens to be in it, whatever. But, for the most part, I do stay away from that stuff. I feel like if you're going to do it, have the real stuff, like real sugar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you just said something before that that I want to answer. That's kind of important.
Well, we were talking about the rehydration in terms of being low carb.
All right, so here's the thing. If you didn't know this already, and for everyone listening, some of the pitfalls that happen with going super low carb and keto is that people need extra salt.
Why is that? Because you haven't got carbs clogging up all the...
It's because the way the kidneys are going to... You excrete more salt, so you need more salt.
Yeah.
So if you're dehydrated or feeling thirsty, that might actually be like a salt issue. So
sometimes I think it might be more than just salt. I wonder if it's a specific nutrient, because I actually put Himalayan salt in water quite a lot, and I'm still thirsty a lot of the time.
Oh, wait. Okay, so let's review. So I talked to a salt expert who said that actually Himalayan salt is really often inconsistent in its terms of iodine content. Okay. And I used to be a fan of Himalayan salt. I think I suggested in my book it's higher in iron. The best one out there, in my opinion, is either Celtic sea salt or Redmond real salt. It's the highest amount of iodine, which is good for the thyroid, and that's what I use. So there could be something off with the salt that you're doing. If you're doing Himalayan, you might want to switch the brand. And that's not to totally rip on Himalayan. It's just that I've literally talked to experts who've written books about salt, and so I trust their opinion when they tell me that when testing has been done, the Himalayan is inconsistent. So I would go for Redmond real salt or Celtic sea salt and use that.
That's interesting.
When you are super low carb and keto, waking up first thing in the morning and throwing salt down the hatch is a great program. A lot of bodybuilders do it because the adrenals run on salt.
Yeah.
So it might be salt. And again, the dehydration factor, what kind of water. I also think too, lemon water in the morning with some salt's really good for the liver. It depends. I don't know. Like, do you drink? Are there other things going on? We could probably talk for hours to assess what could be.
Well, I think the main thing that I wanted to know is you agree with me on the sweetener, which is really interesting because there's I can't remember which brand it is, but there's a type of rehydration powder which seems to be used by a lot of people who are in ketosis. And I was really looking forward to trying it, and it tasted absolutely delicious and very sweet because it was flavored with stevia. And my body did not like it at all. It was like a massive sugar jolt, and actually I got quite sick from taking it. And I tried it 3 or 4 times, and every time I was like, hang on, it can't be this. But
It is. It
it
is then
probably
because,
is, yeah.
there's a lot of people that have expressed that. And I too. So if I have something, stevia, there's something about it that my body definitely does not like. I can tell you that. If I taste something sweetened with stevia, it's just off. Something does not. I would rather actually have real sugar, you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, like
Yeah.
really, I at that point put a damn half teaspoon of sugar in your like you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
there is something about that, and people with autoimmune disorders have mentioned that you know it's it affects them. It's the same thing with quinoa. Quinoa is not technically a grain, but it's a pseudo grain. So people with arthritis and autoimmune disorders like rheumatoid arthritis, they will feel the difference. So if they eat quinoa the next day, they might have trouble buttoning their shirt. It basically gives them the same effect as grains would, because grains trigger that for people with rheumatoid arthritis.
Interesting.
By the way, anyone
Yeah.
listening who's got rheumatoid arthritis, you go strict paleo primal autoimmune protocol and your pain and your symptoms will go away. If anyone is curious about this, there's a very famous chef who completely cured his rheumatoid arthritis through his diet. His name is Seamus Mullen. For those out
wow.
there, a statistic. There's a great documentary called The Perfect Human Diet by C.J. Hunt, and they're preparing to do a part 2 to that. It's the best documentary out there on paleo primal living in terms of really understanding the science behind it. One of the things they have discovered, paleontologists, they see samples of remains of humans and animals for years, right? So they can look at a sample from a 50,000-year-old human and go, okay, this was a man, right? They understand how to look at DNA. Well, in all of their research, rheumatoid arthritis never even showed up in the archaeological record until grains came on the scene about 10,000 years ago.
Wow.
That's when really human decline happened, because we started to domesticate animals and farm and eat stuff we normally wouldn't eat. We would have never eaten grains or any of that stuff unless it was like a situation of famine. So, that says a lot. If you've got rheumatoid arthritis or any autoimmune issue, we know for sure grains trigger that. Wow. And then there's other things, legumes, beans, lectins in the beans. These are things that, it's not just me. It's a million other experts. Heart surgeons have written about this. You got to go down this pathway if you've got an autoimmune disease, because you can be given all the medication you want to control those symptoms. But now we're back to the patching, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And just one more question on the sweetener. If one thinks you think you're being healthy, you buy mouthwash in Whole Foods, it's got xylitol in it. Does that enter the stomach? Does the body process that, like in terms of the metabolism, even if you think you're fasting, or if you just at any point in the day?
Well, for example, anything like fluoride toothpaste, fluoride will get into the gums and to the bloodstream through the mouth, right? Yeah. Fluoride is actually antagonistic to thyroid, to be honest with you. If you're suffering from anything that you want to try to get rid of, you clean it all up, right? Your body doesn't have time to deal with a little piece of gum with xylitol threat. It's worth being strict for the meantime until you correct it, and then go enjoy a gluten pizza in New York at some point. Like, not going to kill you, right? Live your life. Yeah. It's just that how quickly do you want to get better? So it's just, where are you right now? And if you're suffering, you got to stay away from all of that stuff. And it can be tough. Like, I used to like to chew gum. There's other things that I was like, ugh, okay, got to cut that out again. Yeah. And it's okay. It doesn't mean you'll never be able to have it. Listen, I'm going to have a piece of French bread and brie cheese at some point, but it's not going to be weekly, but sure. So this is not a life sentence to never eat a grain or anything again, but it is about aligning one's DNA with what is expected of it. And that is to eat the flesh and animals and fat of, animals and, good fats and vegetables and seeds and nuts. And that's really what we're meant to consume. And when we go outside of that, problems happen.
Good stuff. Now, what is one book that you would recommend, Elle? One book and one tip for living with more energy, vitality, and motivation. We've already talked quite a bit about fatigue, haven't we? But I wonder what your book and your tip would be.
A book on health, you mean? Or any book?
Do you know, it can be anything. It can be, in fact, recently in the Zestology book club, we've had quite a few fiction books, including Shantaram. I don't know if you've read that, but it's absolutely brilliant. And it's 900 pages of pure fiction. So yeah, it can be anything you like.
Okay. Well, I'll recommend, my favorite book of all time, because I think laughter is really important to healing, and I think laughter is really important in life. And I, have a comedy background, and I'm almost always laughing. And The Confederacy of Dunces is probably the most famous book, at least in the U.S. It won the Pulitzer Prize. The guy actually won the Pulitzer after he was dead. He didn't know he won the Pulitzer. His mother actually turned in his transcript after he died. And,
Oh, wow.
And a publisher felt really sorry for her. He's like, oh, some poor old lady, her son died. She's handing me this book. Jesus, I'll read it. And he could not put it down. And he published it. And it's been around for years. It's hysterical. And it's called The Confederacy of Dunces. And it's literally one of the best fiction, hilarious books of all time. And I love a lot of comedy writers, but that's the winner. And then as far as health goes, as far as like looking into like primal, paleo, ancestral health, I would just go back to buying the original Primal Blueprint from Mark Sisson. That is the one that really turns it around for people. Or just go to the websites. There's so much free information and videos, or Google Mark Sisson interview, or Google me and interviews with me if you want to learn more about thyroid. There's so much free info out there.
That's awesome. And where can people find more about you and everything you're doing? Obviously, all the work with Mark as well and the podcast.
Sure. The Primal Blueprint podcast is every Monday that I'm hosting it, essentially. And, we interview everyone on mind, body stuff. You can go to elleruss.com, ELLERUSS.com, which is my website. And anyone out there suffering with thyroid issues, you don't have to buy my book. I mean, I would. It's an awesome book and it's cheap, but you can download a free thyroid guide on my website. It'll tell you all the tests that I just told you, when to get the test, how to take them, do you take medication or not, how to find a doctor in the UK or in the States or another country. So many great resources. And the reason I put that together is because I spent so much, thousands of dollars going to all these idiot doctors. You just keep paying for one. Then they tell you to do this, right? And next thing you know, you're broke and you're like, I just spent 20 grand on nothing. So my thing is, hey, I want everyone for free to get on the right path. Just so go to my website and you can download a free thyroid guide. And right now, and I'm not sure when you're going to air this, but I'm also doing a Women's Empowerment Project Summit right now with amazing guest speakers. You can go to riseupkickass.com and just enter your email and you'll get free access to a video daily between June 17th and July 7th. And then after that, we'll probably, charge, just a very tiny amount to purchase the whole series. But for right now, it's free. And always kind of up to something.
Good stuff. Yeah, I'm glad you've got the free thyroid stuff there because there was a lot to write down and it'd be handy to get it all in one place. But Elle, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I now know a little bit more about the thyroid, which I didn't know that much about before.
Thank you for having me.
Hello again, Tony Wrighton here. Thanks to Elle. Really enjoyed talking to her actually. And I've just about got out of the park now and I'm on the road, so not quite such idyllic sounds of nature, and it's very windy today, so I've got my new fluffy mic cover thing which makes me look very silly. In the past I think I just looked like I was talking into my phone, just like I was talking to someone. Now I think it's a bit more obvious that I'm recording a podcast. I'm not sure how cool that is. Look, as always, thank you for listening to Zestology. I've not mentioned this for a while, but I'm going to today. If you enjoy Zestology and you are in any way interested in helping to help me get the message to more people, the one thing that you could do, probably more than anything else, to help out is head to iTunes and the bit where you write a review, and write a glowing review, or a terrible review. In fact, any review is better than no review. So literally 1 to 5 stars. If you've got some feedback, something you'd like me to improve, that would definitely be a good place to put it. And I think the iTunes algorithm just likes it if you get loads of reviews. So if you're listening to this and you've heard me mention this in the past, maybe 6 months or so, and you wrote a review, then thank you. I really do appreciate it. And there was quite a bounce in reviews last time I mentioned it. But if you're listening to this and you haven't written one yet and you've got a couple of spare minutes, that would be absolutely awesome. Head to Zestology on iTunes, write a review. Leave that feedback, write a 1-star review if you want. I guess, 3 upwards would be better, more welcome, but anything's fine. And I appreciate it, so thank you. That's it for Zestology. As always, I'll be back with another one next week, and I'll see you then.